for the beginner class. I am Jim Bob Burgoon with the South Plains Woodturners, and we're glad you're tuned in. We are going to start out by looking at the parts of the lathe so that we can safely operate it. What I generally say is the lathe has four major parts. It has the part that is down here, which is the bed. The bed supports everything. It keeps everything straight. On this end of the bed, we have the part that's called the headstock. The headstock is where the belts are that are connected to the motor. And as you can see here, this one has three different settings we can choose from in here. Now, this is a variable speed machine, and so there are three different speed ranges in here. Now, if you look at this part right here, which is a safety drive right now, and you see that I'm turning this black part over here, which is called the hand wheel, that turns all the way through. Now, if I take a knockout bar and I put my hand underneath the drive center, I can use it to tap it out. Now I say that to say this: if you look at all the accessories that go into the headstock end of the lathe, you'll notice that they are tapered. And we can pass some of these around right behind you here so that you can see this taper. There's more than one, so, you know. This is a number 2 Morse taper. And if I take my finger and stick it inside the spindle here.
And we broke it.
Nah, you didn't break it. Okay. You will notice that there is a matching taper inside here. So, what happens is, when I insert this into the spindle, those two tapers match. And we get a friction drive. Now, if we have been using it very long, that's going to be way harder than it was for me to get it out. Because, you know, there's going to be force coming from this opposite end. So, you know, make sure your hand is underneath it. You may have to tap it repeatedly to get it to come out. All right, on the spindle, you notice that there are threads. There are some accessories that we will use down the road that will thread on to this spindle. All right, on the opposite end of the headstock, or the opposite end of the bed, we have the tailstock. Now, the tailstock will slide up and down the bed, and it can be locked in place with the handle that's in the back. We generally have a revolving center in the spindle of the tailstock, and if we reverse the handle, it should push out. There's a few of them that we have that kind of get stubborn. But one thing to notice, especially if you look at the ones over here, you will see a groove on the back side of this spindle. There is a lock over here on the back side, and that lock fits into that groove. If this lock is too loose and you go to turn the handle, this whole business can start spinning. So we need that lock engaged in that groove. Okay, when you are locking this down, make sure that you give it a couple of good bumps, because we don't want this vibrating out. All right, there is about a 2¼ inch throw this way. All right, the last part of our tools from our lathe is the part that actually allows us to do work. And that is the tool rest. The tool rest is adjustable, and the bottom part is called banjo, and it can lock at any place up and down this bed. The tool rest portion of it is this, and it is very critical that we get it the right height for the tools we are using. One of the things we're going to do in this class is teach you a lot about technique. Because when everything is right, when the tool rest height is right, when it's the correct distance away from the wood, the turning should be effortless. Now, those are the parts, except for an important one. And that is the switch. We've got 4 lathes like this. One of them is going to get fixed tonight. It's got an off-on switch. The speed is variable speed control. You can hear it going faster, slowing down. But on the 4 big lathes we have, there is a reverse switch. Okay, the reverse is right over here. And I can remember a couple of times in class where a student has inadvertently hit the reverse switch, and they're like, why isn't it cutting? Well, I come over, bump the switch on, see which way it's turning, and, you know, show them where the reverse switch is. All right, these machines have about a 3/4 horsepower motor. And one of the things I know is I am not stronger than 3/4 of a horsepower. So what I have to do is gain a mechanical advantage over the lathe to be able to accomplish work. And Chandler, the way we're going to do that is by physics. Okay, the tool rest is kind of like the balance point on a teeter-totter. Okay, we've all seesawed at one point in time. If the balance point is right in the middle, and I have heavy on one end, light on the other, the heavy goes down, the light goes up. But as I move the balance point, or technically the fulcrum, closer to the strong part, I am able to then manipulate it so I can make a cut. And we're going to see a safety rule here in a minute that talks about where the tool rest should be positioned in relation to the wood. All right, those are the parts of the lathe. We generally try to use a light because some of the instructors in this class are older and not very good looking. And the more light we have, the easier it is for us.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah. Okay. All right. In your book, if you would turn back one page towards the front. These are some basic safety rules. We are here to do number one. You're in class so that you can educate yourself on the proper turning techniques and how to use all the accessories that we will use. All right, a lot of times people will wear safety glasses. Safety glasses are not sufficient enough protection because we're going to have chips that hit us in the face and on our shirt a lot of times. So a full face shield is recommended. We've got extra face shields so that everyone in class can be protected. All right. I've been doing wood turning for the better part of 30 years. I was recently doing a demonstration for our club, and as I was making a cut, all of a sudden the piece of wood came off and it struck me right here on the face shield. So, there was no harm done. It's better to be safe than be sorry. All right. So we're going to look at techniques, tools, and lathe operation. All right. 3 says always use a dust master air filtration system. We've got an air filtration system in here, right over there. We've also got an exhaust fan. It's next to useless. But there will be times where we have both of them running, especially when we are sanding. A particle mask like Lewis is wearing is a very handy thing. 4, you can wear hearing protection. And Chandler, this is what you need to know. I'm talking to the youngest person in the room. Because, that's right. Hey, I've got one behind both ears. Hearing damage is cumulative. It happens a little bit at a time. And the statistics I've read say that anytime you're exposing yourself to over 85 decibels, it's potentially damaging to your hearing. And, I'm sure we've all been in situations where, we've heard a lot of noise and our ears start ringing. And, after a while that'll go away until it doesn't. When I used to laugh at this when I was teaching junior high. I would tell the kids that exact same thing until it doesn't. I'd say, I have ringing in both ears 24/7. And inevitably, some student would ask, are they ringing right now? And fortunately enough, Enough times I had other students that would go, duh, you know. Okay, so protect your hearing. 5, do not wear loose clothes, gloves, or jewelry, as they can become tangled with the lathe. Okay, you will notice a lot of the instructors wear these type of things. These are smocks. And what the smock does is, number one, it covers up the clothes I don't want to get dirty. And number two, it zips all the way up to the neck so that I don't have sawdust going down my shirt and ending up in places I don't want sawdust. Because it will happen. And we do have an extra smock over here. It's one of my old ones. And this is actually my dress smock. It doesn't look too bad yet. My work smock looks pretty bad. All right. Another thing about this is long hair can be dangerous. You know, you're perfect because you've got it in a ponytail, Jewel. You know, me, I don't have much to worry about.
If he let me, he wouldn't like that too.
Yeah. But, you know, we don't want anything that can get caught in something spinning and potentially pull us into the lathe. Or one of the saddest things I ever saw was when I was teaching high school. I went to visit another high school teacher, and he said, "Oh, you need to see this." And he brought out this little manila envelope. It was about this tall, about that wide. He said, "Look in there." I looked in there and I said, "Man, that looks like hair." He said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "I had a student running the lathe. They bent over to get a better look at it, and their hair dropped down and jerked it out by the roots." So, you know, we do have to be careful and think about what can potentially happen and take steps to prevent it from happening. All right. 6, never start the lathe before checking to make sure the spindle speed is correct for the size of the work being turned. Also, make sure the work clears the tool rest by rotating the hand wheel before starting the lathe. One, would you get me out a center finder, a pencil, and an awl? Now, the wood we're going to be working with tonight is cedar elm. Oh, get me a better. No, I can use that one.
This here.
Yes, I like that one much better.
That's more
Much easier to teach with. All right. When we are getting started with our materials, we generally do this on a table, but I want it to be seen on the camera. All right, so what we will do is use a center finder, and what you will do is align it on every corner, and we'll draw a line. Okay? Somewhere in there, right about there, is the true center. Okay? I'm going to do this for both ends. Now you would say, well, why doesn't it cross right in the middle? Well, one, because I cut this wood on a bandsaw, and this is more like what I'm wanting. Okay? If you look carefully, you can see that with 4 lines, I end up with a box in the middle. The center of that box is the center. Now, what I will do is take an awl, which is one of the projects in this class, either that or a screwdriver, and I will put it on center, and I will make a center point mark. Okay? Go to the other end. One of our older woodturning members says the way he gets all his exercise is by picking up everything he drops. Okay, so now I've got both ends center marked. Okay? I'm going to have to scoot down to the other end. What I will do with the center point mark is I will put it in the hole that I made the indention in with the awl, and I'll bring the tailstock up to match the other end, and then lock the tailstock. Now, I'm pretty close. I may be off just a little bit. And it may be because this is probably out of square. But now I'm going to tighten it up with the spindle hand wheel. And what I want to assure is the teeth on the safety drive bite into the wood. Then I'm going to lock my spindle on the tailstock. Now, this particular safety rule says that once we position the tool rest, and my actual tool rest is too high, but we'll talk about this here in a minute. We want the tool rest to be right at 1/8 of an inch away from the wood. Now, if I turn the wood all the way around by hand, I can make sure the wood is not going to hit the tool rest. Because if I do turn it on without checking and it comes around and hits the tool rest, bad things could potentially happen. Number one, the wood could come flying off. Number two, it could break the tool rest. Ask me how I know. You know? Yeah. I've broken a tool rest before, but it wasn't because of this rule. But, you know, we want to make sure everything is right. Now, visually, distance, about 1/8 of an inch. You know, that gap, that's perfect. All right, moving on. Your instructor, I'm still at number 6. Your instructor will help you adjust the lathe. It is always better to start slower, at least the first time you turn it on. Then you can speed it up. If the lathe starts bouncing, like it is now, it's running too fast. So slow it down to where your lathe is running smoothly. And then you can begin to turn. Now, as we get the wood more in balance, we'll be able to speed it up, which will make your cutting go a lot easier. All right. Now number 7. In fact, we've also already talked about a little bit of number 7. You know, securely mounting it. And And we also want to make sure it's free of imperfections. Now, because this wood was a standing tree in Lubbock 2 weeks ago, it's what we call green or wet. It's not dry. Most of the time when wood is dry, it has about a 12% moisture content. This is probably closer to 70 to 80% moisture content right now. You'll feel it being moist. Now, there may be some minimal cracks on the ends. That's not to worry about. I cut off a majority of those about noon today, and it amazes me when I look at this wood how fast the wood can start checking just between now and then. You know, when I look at this crack, it doesn't go very deep. It doesn't go real long. So, you know, I'm not worried about that. One thing, especially if you are turning found wood in this area, if it is dry, because the wind blows all the time here, there can be areas that follow the annual rings on the end of the wood that can have cracks. And those cracks can go all the way through, and you might not be able to see it from the outside. So it's a good idea anytime you're selecting a piece of wood, you know, spend time looking at it and make sure it's sound, because we don't want it coming into two pieces on the lathe. Now, I will talk about bend for a moment.
Well, because I have to hire a guy to come repair my sheetrock ceiling. I had a bow come apart
Yeah, it just came apart.
for no reason that I can see.
And you weren't turning on it, right?
And I had stepped off to one side to change tools, and just as I stepped back almost in front of it, it flew apart.
Yeah, so he wasn't putting any stress on the wood. It just came apart. There was probably a weak area in it. So, you know, we've got to be really careful. All right. Number 8. Make sure all guards and covers are in place. The reason being, a belt and a pulley can cut your finger off as easy as a saw blade. So, if your car's ever running, don't stick your fingers down in there, inside the motor, because it'll grab it, it'll cut you off. So, you know, that's safe. There's also another door over here that we can access whenever we're changing belt speeds. But we probably won't have to do that in this class. All right. 9. Nine is a safety rule because the only student that we've ever had hurt in one of these classes to get hurt. She had the lathe running. She was talking to her instructor with the lathe tool in her hands, and you know, we tend to use our hands when we talk. And she happened to get the lathe tool too close, it tested wood. Boom! It slammed the lathe tool down onto the tool rest. The only problem was her finger was in between there. And it crushed some bones in her finger. That was the night I learned how nice the women's restroom is here. It's the Taj Mahal. The men's restroom is horrible. But the women's restroom is really good. No, we took good care of her. We got her fixed up. Okay, this rule says before the tool touches the wood, it should contact the tool rest. So we always want to hear tool touching tool rest prior to touching wood. We call that anchoring. And later on, we are going to reference this in our ABCs of turning. Anchoring is tool on the tool rest prior to touching wood. Okay, I have a question right quick. Is anyone left-handed? Man, 2 classes in a row. No. Left-handers are perfectly fine. Several members of our club are left-handed. I can actually turn left-handed. Sometimes I don't even think about it. Okay. What my left hand will typically do is when I'm positioned in front of the tool rest, I will run my index finger right on this groove. The left hand's job is just to make sure the tool stays in contact with the tool rest. My right hand is the hand that will control the movements of the tool. But really, I'm not going to use my arms very much. I'm going to be using more of a body movement. That way, it can be very straight and very smooth. All right. 10, know your capabilities. 11, use a tailstock whenever it's possible. There will be some situations in this class where we do not use a tailstock. Or we may be using the tailstock for a different operation, like drilling. But anytime we can use it, it's safest to use it. Okay. Anytime we are sanding on the lathe, we've got it round, we're making it smooth with sandpaper, we want to take this part of the tool rest off. That way we're not running the risk of getting our hands caught in between a spinning piece of wood and a stationary piece of metal. So take the tool rest off. Be safe whenever we are sanding or finishing. "13 says do not overreach. Okay. This is not talking about standing back here and running the lathe up here. That's not what it's talking about. What it's talking about is how much of the tool you have hanging over the tool rest. Because the more the tool that's hanging over the tool rest, the more down force you're getting on this end. And up force on this end. So, we always want to try to keep our tool rest close. And anytime we reposition it, spin it by hand. Alright. 14, keep your tools sharp. Dull tools are dangerous. as they require more force to make them work. We've got a grinder here in this class. Our instructors would generally are the first ones to notice your tools are dull. In the class that we just finished up 2 weeks ago, we were on our last project. A student seemed to be having a little difficulty, and I said, let me see this tool for a second. Brought it up here, sharpened it, took it back to her, and she was like, man, that makes all the difference in the world. I will tell you this. If I'm having to work hard to get a cut to happen, something is wrong. It's either the tool is dull, the tool rest is at the wrong height, or maybe something else. But the first thing I generally check is I'll take a quick look at tool rest height, and your standard tool rest height when we are using a gouge should be when I put the tool on level, the bottom of the flute of the gouge should match up with the center point. Now, obviously I can tell right now my tool rest is too high. So, I can lower my tool rest down, get it correct. Excellent. Yes. Thank you, Andy, for getting out my, it's in the drawer above that. Yes. Okay. So, I've referenced the gouge. This is our wooden gouge. A gouge is curved on the end and cupped. The cupped part is called the flute. So, when it is set correctly, the bottom of the flute should be on the center. Alright? The part that we grind to make it sharp is called the bevel. And you will notice on some of our gouges we have this shape right here. That shape is called a fingernail. That's what it looks like unless they're mine. Okay? Alright.
Jim Bob, explain why you're putting that on center.
Okay?
The cutting process. That way they'll-
I will. Okay. Now, the best explanation for what David's talking about is right here. A knife. Now, if I am wanting to cut wood away, am I going to hold my knife like this? No. I'm going to put it to where it slices the fibers. And that will work. Now, you will notice on some of these tool rests they have an angle right here. This angle is almost perfect for how we should hold the tool at that angle when we are making a cut. I said we wanted to anchor first. The first part of the tool that should touch the wood should be the bevel. And so we may have our tool way low. And then as we raise the tool, it will create a cut. We call that anchor, bevel, cut. A, B, C. So I assume that's what David was talking about. All right. 15, do not use tools for what they're not intended for. 16 is a finishing rule. If I have oil-soaked rags, I'm not going to wad them up and throw them in a trash can, because they can spontaneously combust if more stuff gets piled on. So the safe thing to do is drape it over the edge of the trash can until it dries. Never leave the lathe running and walk off. That's what rule 17 is saying. 18, stay alert, take frequent breaks, and never operate the lathe while under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Common sense stuff. Oh, that's what number 19 says. Use common sense. Now, one of the things we try to do in this class is we try to have a 1-to-1 ratio of mentors to students. And so there should be one of our club members with you at all the times, you know, just to keep an eye on you, make sure everything's going well, and watch out for you. All right. Kill it for just a second, Bryce. Okay. Safety rules didn't cover was we need to make sure the lathe fits you. The way we determine that is if you stand next to the lathe and put your arm at a right angle and walk up to the lathe, your elbow should be just about right on center point. We're going to have to make you taller, Jewel. Okay? We've got something that'll do that. And it's not a rack. That's the good thing. Okay. All right. So, this lathe fits me pretty well. I'm going to talk about my stance because I'm right-handed. I generally want to stand left foot forward. I'm normally not going to stand this far to the right, but I want to stand this far right now so that you can see. All right. So, I'm going to slow it down, bring it up to speed. Okay. Started shaking, so I'm going to back off just a little bit. All right. There's my anchor. There's my bevel. And then raise the tool to get a cut. And you notice that I am going a little further down the wood block each pass. Now, because this wasn't seated super, it kind of okay, I want to see if I can speed it up some now. tool anchored next to my body. And all I'm doing is going back and forth with my body. And because of that, I get a nice straight cut. And you can see how the tips are kind of curling up. I'm going to go until I'm round. I don't have to turn it off to see if it's round. What I can do is set the lathe tool on it. Okay, over here I still have flat spots, but down here I'm round. Now, or it's pretty much. Okay? I always want the tool rest to extend beyond the end of the wood. Okay? So I've readjusted it down to here. If the tool rest is right even with the end, sometimes students will slip off the end. Alright. So I'm going to make this part round.
Thank you.
And because I am almost perfectly round now, I can speed it up even more. And it's going to cut way more efficiently. Sometimes you just have to talk to the wood. Okay. Now, I want you to all come nice and close. Because I want you to see this. Because when everything is correct, when I'm anchored, when I'm beveling, and then, as I raise the back end of the tool, guess what's happening? I'm getting a cut. And, you know, I could do it all like this if I wanted to. It'd take way longer. But, you know, and I wasn't torquing real hard on this. Okay, now, this is spindle roughing edges. Other tools we will use in this class. The Thompson tools have 3 tools inside. Different gouges. We have 2 different parting tools, a diamond parting tool, a thin kerf parting tool. And we will also use a skew. And, you know, your instructors will help you with this. Now, well, see, it's going to get on you.
Oh, yeah. I had some
But-
work.
But, you know, my philosophy is any day you get to wear sawdust is a good day. Now, we want to be safe. We want to have fun. All right. In my bag over here, I've got the blanks that we are going to be using. I believe all my blanks are pretty close to the same lengthwise, but if you're going to be on one of these smaller lathes over here, you need to make sure you get a blank that's shorter than 11 inches, which I'm pretty certain they all are, but 11 inches on the smaller lathes is about all they can do. Okay, I do have a couple that are longer. We've got other centering tools. You need to locate a lathe that fits you. The way we do that is this way. All right. Our other instructors will help us get the other centering tools out. Ben's already working on it. Your instructor will also help you get set up the first time. And we'll go from there. We'll have fun. All right. Anybody have any questions? The restroom is down the hall. If you go out the doors and go that way, the women's restroom is the first one you go to. Yeah. All right. So, you can select a blank, select a lathe. I'll get my mess off of